Hi everybody. Today I want to talk about public education for a little bit. And really I'm only barely brushing the surface here because there are a lot of things that need addressing. So I'm just going to tackle two issues for now that share a common theme, but I'm going to split these into two separate videos. So for the first video, it's how the history of the world or the universe is taught in schools. Yep, I'm really that brave. Or foolish. Depends on who you ask. So, before we start talking about evolution, creationism, and intelligent design, I think it's important to get some definitions out of the way because it's only a theory is quite possibly the dumbest argument ever. In science, a scientific theory is a well substantiated explanation of some aspect of the natural world that is acquired through the scientific method, repeatedly tested and confirmed through observation and experimentation. This is, yeah, it's from Wikipedia, but that is a very good definition. And a hypothesis is a tentative statement about the natural world leading to deductions that can be tested. If the deductions are verified, it becomes more probable that the hypothesis is correct. If the deductions are incorrect, the original hypothesis can be abandoned or modified. So a hypothesis is an idea. It's a tentative statement, and you test it, you test it, you test it, you test it, you test it. And if even once it fails the test, it has to be either abandoned or changed. It only becomes a theory if no one has been able to prove it incorrect. If all the evidence leads to it being correct, then it gets to be called a theory. So let me break this down to you. When we talk about a scientific theory, this is what a layperson would call a fact. Like gravity, for example. It's probably the best example of a scientific theory that most people simply consider fact, because that's essentially what a scientific theory is. So when a layperson says, I have a theory, what they really mean is they have a hypothesis. See, evolution is fact, simple as that. The theory of evolution is our understanding of how and why evolution occurs. Okay? We know evolution happens. That's a fact. The theory is how and why. Now, to be a theory, certain criteria have to be met. It fits observational data, it allows for predictions, and it fits experimental data. So when dealing with evolution, the observation is that organisms change over time. Well, that fits. We see it all the time. Heck, we even do it artificially. You think there are wild chihuahuas running around the plains of Mexico? Ever tasted a truly wild apple? Now, when Darwin unveiled his theory, the book on the origin of species via natural selection, it started by explaining how artificial selection created new species, farm animals, produce, domestication. No one had a problem with that. That was actually, I think, 90% of the book. And he finished the book with sort of a, oh yeah, and this happens naturally in the wild too. And really, no one had a problem with that either. He explained it really well. And he provided examples that we could see ourselves. So it made sense. It was actually years later when someone realized this could be applied to us that religious types got uppity. And now I'm rambling. So allows for predictions. So based on our understanding of the geology of the Earth, we can expect to find different animals at different times in history stored in different layers of rock. We can also predict that if we go back far enough, as in deep enough, organisms will tend to be simpler. And that's exactly what we find when we dig for fossils. Um, if you dig down to Cambrian layer rock, in the Cambrian period, I think the biggest animal was about a meter long, so about 3 feet. Most things were simple. I don't think the spine had even been developed yet. Um, Rambling again. But we can also make predictions about the future. Okay? So we can predict how an organism might react to a new environmental factor. For example, biologists predicted that Roundup-resistant crops would lead to Roundup-resistant weeds. And they explained how this was going to happen. And guess what's a major plague throughout the American heartland today? One could consider the domesticated pets and foods we eat to be experiments that demonstrate how evolution works. But we do it in labs too. You ever been to a pet store and seen the wingless fruit flies that are sold as food? Or albino mice for a pet snake? So the short version is evolution isn't a guess. And I'm very sorry if that somehow makes you feel less important. Wait, no, I'm not. Evolution is freaking amazing. If anything, you should feel more important because intelligent design. See, intelligent design is an attempt to meld together evolution and religion. The basic version, the most basic explanation of intelligent design is, yes, evolution happens, but because God. Now here's the tricky bit. I don't have a problem with this idea. I actually believe something very similar myself. However, it's not a theory. It's not science at all, in fact. So how do you observe intelligent design? How? I mean, we can observe the changes over time and the historical record of them, but without knowing the end game of the design, what the plan, what is God's plan for evolution, we can't prove whether it is random or part of a plan. And since the core premise of intelligent design is that it's planned, that doesn't work. So what about experimenting? Okay? Well, if we create a new species through selective breeding, and we do this quite frequently actually, have we just gone against God's plan? Or did God want us to make the new species? If that's the case, is there free will at all? Or are you simply a puppet? Are you starting to see the problem here? But one of the principal requirements for a theory is the ability to make predictions. If you know how something works, you can predict how it will continue to work, and then see if you were right. We've actually discovered planets in our solar system this way, using the theory of gravity. Newton's laws, I mean, they were adjusted over time, but the math predicted that we should have a large gravitational body here. And so the people aimed their telescopes there, and guess what? There's a planet! And now we know that they're there. That was how a lot of the planets in our solar system were discovered, actually. So, make an intelligent design prediction. Well, you have to know what the plan is in order to do that. So you can't. It's just not a theory, guys. It's not science. It's a wonderful idea. And like I said, it's something that I actually believe myself to an extent. But it's not science. So when your kids come home from school talking about evolution, instead of fighting the school or fighting the government about what's taught in schools, why don't you just sit them down and say, yeah, and this is why I believe it works that way. Isn't that easier? Isn't that better, maybe? So on to creationism. This is a fun one. So to get creationism, you have to take everything that we know about the world and throw it all away. All of it, because it's all wrong. Fossils are lies put there by the devil to fool you. Geology is a setup. The layers don't really get older. God's just a practical joker. He made it look that way. Oh, and all those stars that are billions and billions of light years away. Yeah, no, the speed of light isn't a real thing. God just hung the stars up there and made it look like they're really far away. That's right, because it all took 7 days just a few thousand years ago. Well, 6 days, because you needed a breather after that. And let's face it, when you create the entire universe in less than a week, you're entitled to a day off. And how do we know this? Because a book says so. Yep, a book. Look, if you want to live in the Dark Ages and deny the truth of science, that is your right, and I can't stop you. But there is a danger in that. Electricity, medicine, flight, radio, telephones, TV, all of these are the result of science, which is the result of asking, how does that work? And seeking the answer. When the answer is simply, because Bible, then what's the point of asking? What's the point of looking? What's the point of learning? If all the answers are here in this book, why even build a telescope? Now, I'm not anti-religion, but religion is a personal choice, and as such, it doesn't belong in schools. Because there are more, there are dozens of religions in America. All right? You can't ask a Catholic family to accept a Protestant version of teaching in a public school any more than you could ask a Buddhist or an atheist to accept the Catholic version of teaching in school. If you want religious education, you go to Sunday school or you go to a Bible study. But public education needs to include science for the future of our country, to stay competitive, to keep learning, to keep advancing, to get new technologies to make our life better. We need science in schools. Faith is for home. Thanks for watching.